Welcome to another exciting show with Kopi With Vans. That's right, I'm your host today, Vans. I'm back as usual every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Without fail, I'm here with my cup of coffee. I'm sure you guys and girls are also having a cup of coffee. And I'm not sure if my speakers today, they are having their cup of coffees because it's a surprise. I've not told them to prepare cups of coffee. So let's see what they're up to. That's right, folks. Today's topic, we are going to talk about New Year Resolution 2023. All right. This is not something new for us. We have been talking about this. We hearing about this. We are trying to do, and then we're trying to repeat that again and again. But I have two great speakers who will be joining me very shortly. They are from the Total Wellness Initiative of Singapore. We call it the TWIS. They're great human beings. They have tons of experiences they're going to share with us on how we can, have a great resolution for 2023. It's still not bad, right? I mean, it's just January and only engaging the gear to move ahead for the months to come by. For viewers who are watching this, we are in Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, so you can listen to them after about an hour of this show. If you are watching this, you can also please share and like. And if you do have any questions, you can also ask us in a while. All right. The last 15 minutes is going to be just purely Q&A. So I'm going to, before I invite my speaker to do his short introduction of himself, I'm just going to, bring in John on board. So let's get Jonathan on board. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Van. Nice to meet you, and thanks for the
Nice
invite
to
for
meet
this.
you. Thank you, John. So now it's a surprise. I've not alleged you this. Are you having a cup of coffee?
No, I have water. Cannot drink coffee at night.
Oh, water. Okay.
Yeah,
Cheers to
can't drink
you.
water.
All
Yep,
right.
cheers.
Before we bring in the second speaker, John, maybe you want to do a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure. Hi to all the listeners out there, and my name is John, and I'm currently a mental health researcher at the University of Sydney. Currently finishing up my PhD, and co-founded Total Wellness during the pandemic. And really, the idea is to help people be a little more proactive with their well-being and to help them achieve a better state of wellness overall from a more holistic perspective as well. Oh, I think you're muted, Van.
Said, let's invite the second speaker, Sharmain.
Hi everyone.
Hey.
So I did get my cup of coffee here. Shouldn't be drinking
Oh,
coffee
okay.
at night.
You did? Oh.
But yeah. Hi
So,
everyone.
Sharmain, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me in Kopi With Vans. Sorry, it was muted, so the whole process has went off a little. Yes. So, before we start on engaging our gears, you want to do a quick introduction of yourself first, please?
Sure. So happy to speak to everyone here. In my day job, I do HR, so I'm a global OD specialist, mostly looking at culture, engagement, a bit of wellness from an employee standpoint. And then on the side, I'm the co-founder as well, along with John for TWIS. So we look at prevention and wellness.
Right. I was looking at your bio a little. So I see that you are actually engaging in a lot of physical, spiritual, social, creative, intellectual, environmental. So many things that. How do you actually put it all into context?
Yeah, so I think definitely for myself as a mental health researcher, for a long time we always study some of the psychosocial and the biological aspects of mental health conditions. But over the time, I kind of started to learn that there are actually a lot of other aspects as well. Things like our finances, things like our occupation, all these tend to also have a very huge impact on our mental health and our well-being overall. So we kind of did some research. We identified, the 8 dimensions of wellness, which is a well-established framework for wellness. And we did a bit more deeper digging, so things like digital wellness, creative wellness. These are newer dimensions. People don't really know about them yet.
Yeah.
John, yeah, sorry. Sharmain, you were saying something?
Oh yes, I was just saying that I think when I was chatting about this 10-dimensional wellness idea with John earlier on, before we started Total Wellness or when at the initial phase of Total Wellness, I think what's really interesting is that although it's based off of the research back and the science, right? it's very applicable to our daily lives, how the 10 dimensions really fit into a lot of things that we are already doing, and how do we then be more mindful of certain things that we practice, in our day to day, and how do we then um, do more of those things that makes us happy and feel fulfilled and all of those things.
Nice. And these are the things that we're going to dive in today for the next 40, 45 minutes. So viewers who are watching this, definitely able to engage Jonathan and Sharmain for these questions, and we will be able to answer that. But before we jump into the topic itself, I know we have prepared. Pandemic actually has caused a lot of issues, not only for physical health but mental as well. And of course, as the topics goes by, the segments we're going to talk about it. But what are the challenges you faced during the period of 2 years, and what kind of initiative that you took, and then that actually moved on to TWIS in the future?
So I think for me, so my time really in the mental health space started with IMH as a volunteer back in 2014. And over time, when I started my PhD in 2019 as well, I was able to kind of develop a bit more of an understanding of mental health issues, and subsequently really kind of bring it all together in different kinds of initiatives. And my work really was focused on supporting people with mental health conditions at IMH. And over time, when the pandemic hit, we kind of had to pivot our volunteering work to a different model, and had to go online. And for me, it was really like, now what can I do that we can't do a lot of physical face-to-face kind of interactions, and then with the mask restrictions and all that. So what else could I do? So that's where I turned to a bit more psychoeducation, but I didn't want to duplicate things that were out there. I wanted to come up with something, a different take on something that is very important, which is mental health and well-being.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that, and of course, all the best for TWIS. John, the reason why we have this topic of New Year resolution is every year, pretty much. I mean, of course, we don't have the percentage. People always have this resolution, and then every year, in the month of December, they will sit down and then they pencil down, and then they start back again and again and again. What is exactly happening in their mindset or the goal setting, and why there's some who can't able to achieve it, even though they want to achieve it, but as the months and days and weeks goes by, they can't stick it to the plan? Is there any particular reason why that is the issue?
Yeah, so I think it's very hard to pinpoint an exact reason, because purely everyone has very different motivations, and we talk about motivation as the driving force behind our actions and our behaviors. So when people when their motivation kind of wanes at the start of the year, new year, people have a very high level of motivation, and as the year goes by, your motivation level drops as well, especially if you have not managed to sustain this level of motivation. And that's where I think a lot of times the goals that we set out for ourselves at the start of the year tend to fall off as well. And I think as Sharmain and I, when we work with people, we always kind of talk about the importance of sustainability and the long-term progress towards a particular goal, rather than actually aiming for very large goals.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that in addition to that, right, the interesting thing is that I actually just put out a post on LinkedIn about my New Year's resolution, just like yesterday.
Right. Okay.
And one of them is skipping. So
Okay.
I am quite a klutzy person in general, but I picked up skipping as a form of challenge, right? And I kind of want to do it every single day. But life happens. So in the past 2 to 3 days, I haven't been skipping, not because I don't want to or didn't make time for it, but I injured my knee because I didn't skip in the proper way. So I think, it's not about whether or not you fall off the horse, when you are aiming for your goals. It's really acknowledging that hey, sometimes life happens, and it's okay if you fall off, as long as you learn then from that point, how do you get back up and get your motivations back up again. And it's okay if you stop for 2 to 3 months, it's life. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to come back and check with Sharmain in the month of June to see how skipping progress, how it went, maybe become like those, you can see in the YouTubers and, all these Instagrams, they go left and right and left and right. Yeah. So yeah, we will definitely come and check on you on June. Okay, let's see on that. Goals. We're going to talk about goal setting. And this is probably, I think, even in the in the lower primary school, boys and girls will know that, right? The goal setting is very much of an important thing that we all have to do. But unfortunately, given the situation of this pandemic and situations of income, finances, and excuses and tiredness, so many things can come along to cloudy, become very cloudy to your mind. And John, I know you mentioned before. I mean, I know so from your bio that you're actually a mental health researcher. So if someone comes to you and say that, hey, I have a goal, will you be looking at whether the goal is achievable or non-achievable? Because some people have goals that is not really realistically able to achieve it, but even though they
Mm.
put it there every year, they may not be able to achieve it because of maybe it's too unrealistic. So what's your take on that, John?
Right. So I think for me personally, as a mental health researcher, usually we kind of work very well with frameworks and models. So one of my favorite goal setting models is really the SMART framework. So the SMART framework is, basically you want to have a goal that is very specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's also basically relevant, and it's time based. Then these days you also have a smarter framework, which is you want to evaluate these goals, you want to refine them later on as well. So when you have these different frameworks and having this particular smart or smarter framework, it really helps you to adjust kind of the goals that you create. So you make sure that they are time based. I think that's one of the requirements. So having this time base really helps you to be able to track and progress and kind of ensure that you are on progress towards your goals. And that's really the particularly important point, is to be able to track the progress, because when you measure something, you're able to keep track of it, you're able to kind of carry on in the long term.
John, I mean, added to that, Sharmain, I'll come back to you in a while. But coming to that, it's a bit strange because someone, I've seen, of course, not to mention names here, they put a big screen, on the screen, they put memo, they even put posters and kind of stuff in A5 and kind of stuff. These are the things you want to achieve and kind of stuff. But often it leads to disappointment after someone has set a goal. And somewhere around
Right.
within the first couple of months, if you notice that, the drive or the N2 just drops tremendously. Is there something to do with your motivational factor?
So I think it's really about the attainability of this goal that you're talking about. So when you create a large goal, or like when you mentioned a very unrealistic goal, then definitely that mismatch of expectation and reality will create very negative feelings. And for example, even if you create a very long goal, and when you have this very long goal, you don't create smaller goals in between, and because you aren't able to sustain your motivation for that long. Some people definitely can, but if you have smaller goals in between, you can then leverage on the positive gains from each of the goal, and then you'll be able to move further for a longer period of time.
Thanks. How about you, Sharmain? Well, I know your skipping is your goal, but of course the challenge has come in. I mean, talking from your personal experiences, so how are you feeling it right now?
I think that it's quite interesting. Like with goals, right? We tend to stick to it. Like, so for example, myself, right? Not the best example, but it's a real example. I used to have reading goals. So like I think I started the first year I set a New Year's resolution for a reading goal. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do like 10 books this year, which is,
Right.
in theory not a very difficult goal, right? It's like once a month-ish. But then at the end of the year, I was like, I didn't finish, many books. I finished like 2 or 3 books. And so the next year I was just like, okay, you know what, let's set realistic goals, 5 books. And then eventually became 3 books. And then eventually I decide that, after reflecting on my behaviors and my habits, like I'm not a very book kind of reader. Like I read the news,
Right.
I talk to people, and that's my way of learning. I listen to podcasts and I listen to, maybe audiobooks, but reading is just not my thing. So I think
Okay.
it's also quite important to find like resolutions that best fit you and like
Right.
how, you are as a person. Yeah. So that's like skipping is something that is definitely fun for me. So I like to try one new thing every year. So that makes sense. But if
Right.
6 months in I realize that it's not working out, I would probably change it to something else. What about
Okay.
yourself,
So
Ben? Like, what are your goals?
okay. So actually, to be very honest, I love skipping. So
Oh, really?
if you look through my videos and kind of stuff, I love to skip.
That's so cool. Okay, I'm gonna
You
get some.
can. I mean, when you jump, you actually generally are happy. Sometimes of course
It's
children jump
true.
because of happiness. children jump because they're angry and they're crying. But there is I mean, I'm sure John will agree with that. The dopamine, the endorphins, the serotonin and oxytocin. Probably not the oxytocin and serotonin, the love and happy hormones. But I think that endorphins that you're releasing it out. So you feel good. You feel exhausted. You feel refreshed, re-energized, and recuperated from that. So every time I skip about 1 hour or 1 hour 30 minutes, I go into that zone that I actually forget about my surroundings. Yeah, and I was skipping very badly. So after 1 year, I would not say pro, but still, amateur, coming there, getting better and better. So skipping is one of my goals to get even more better right now.
I'm excited. Okay.
So that's about it. So John, coming back to that, John was saying that, bigger goals, we can break it down into smaller ones. As we achieve it, that'd be fine, right? I mean, eventually you will reach your bigger goals that you mentioned.
Yes, definitely. I think that's the most ideal way, because
All right.
along the path, if you follow the SMARTER framework, right, you'll be constantly evaluating and refining your goals,
Right.
so that you make sure that you still maintain that realistic aspect.
Right. And also Sharmain has said that, along the way, if she find that, something doesn't work, then you got to change it, right? So I think that is pretty much, I think it's smart choice rather than waiting until next year, the new year, right? I had someone came and told me that, hey, I'm going to start on my diet and my training. I said, okay. But he said, I'm only going to start in January 2nd. I said, why? Now it's December 23rd. Right? He said, no, I got these 7 days. So somehow or other, they have fixed in, the new year starts, it's a brand new year. I'm going to start everything on the 2nd. But then on the 5th or 7th or 8th of January, they go back again. Oh, I'm going to start next month, 2nd. So it's a little disappointment for themselves as well. They know, but unfortunately, like what John has said, it's okay to have a bigger goals, but breaking them into smaller ones and then achieve them and then readjust along the way. Thank you guys for this. We're going to go into something what we call the mindset. All right. I know with TWIS, you guys do a lot of stuff, but talking about mindset. So maybe we can start out with Jonathan first. Jonathan, what are we really looking at in terms of mindset and adapting to life that, in the longer
so
run
I think
for us?
definitely when we talk about mindset, we are looking at the perspectives that people hold within their various aspects of life. So it's their values, their belief systems, and also kind of the way that they approach life in general. So for myself, right, I'm a mental health researcher, so I have a very critical approach towards everything that I look at. And sometimes I do find that these this overly analytical or critical perspective kind of hinders my ability to just enjoy life and to kind of be content with the little things in life as well. And that's actually one of my goals this year, is to really start to think on a different perspective, to try and adopt a more positive attitude towards life. Yeah, but I think there are a lot of different approaches that people can take and mindsets that they can adopt, and sometimes it's situational as well. Sometimes a very positive mindset can help you go very far, but in other places, when you are forcing yourself to be positive, forcing yourself to really put yourself out there, even though you are feeling very down, that can have a detrimental effect, and it can be negative as well. So it's really situation specific, and it's important that everyone understands and is able to be aware of all these influences within their life.
Thank you, John. Sharmain, any take on this?
For me, like one of the things that I feel gets to me a little bit is this whole always needing to find the next goalpost. So I'm the kind that I'm always thinking like, oh, once I achieve this, I'll be this happy, and then once I achieve that, I'll be that happy. But then I'm starting to realize now, with more and more goals that I'm achieving, that actually if I don't take the time to reflect and think about all of the achievements that I've actually accomplished in the past, like I'll never be happy, because there's always going to be something bigger out there for me to do and something better out there for me to get. And so this time, like taking the time, I think at the end of the year, last year, like the last week of the year, I actually took some time to like think about like, hey, how far we have come, like how my career is going, and like there were things to celebrate, but I definitely know that throughout the year I wasn't celebrating any of it. I was just a bit like, oh no, there's still so many things to do. So yeah, that like one of the probably awareness of having that kind of mindset might help with
Right.
fulfillment.
Guys, in the pandemic, this is the first time, I mean, probably the first time that, mental resilience or mental strength or mental alertness, whatever we can call it, anything to do with mental, is so much of emphasis has been placed on it or put it on it, right? Because a lot of people went through so much of mental stress, mental pressure, that lead to anxiety, depressions, and so many things that's going on. And even WHO, or even local governments, everywhere, they're talking about, calling your best friends or friends or families just to check on them, how they are doing, because there's something that not our humans, we have never went through, right? Staying at home for a long period of time, cannot socialize, cannot do this, cannot do that, so it being so pressure. But even though after that, now we are, thank God, thank whoever it is, but things are going very smooth. But John, do you think that still people have recovered from it, or probably they are still, still very feel comfortable doing meetings via Zoom and streams and all those stuff?
So I think it's hard to say recover, because I don't think people were sick per se mentally. I think it really depends on how you define mental illness, mental disorders, right? So I don't think we were sick, but definitely that there was a collective trauma that society experienced due to COVID. And I think that brings into the idea of resilience quite a bit, like you mentioned a bit about mental resilience. And,
Yep.
if we talk about resilience, it's really the idea that you're able to bounce back, you're able to push forward, you're able to carry on after a very traumatic, a very painful or serious event. And I think as a society, we definitely have come out of this relatively more resilient than before, because we have learned different lessons. We have been able to kind of be able to see some of the more important things that we want to focus on as well, and how we can slowly build everything back to the way things used to be, and even better. You see, nowadays we have Zoom, we have these kind of podcasts. People are listening to a lot of things online. You have lectures overseas and all that kind of stuff. So I think definitely there's a lot of good that also came out from the pandemic, as much as it was a very traumatic and very seriously negative event during our history.
Indeed. Sharmain?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like a lot of this mental resilience thing, and mental, illnesses or conditions, like they have existed way before the pandemic. It's just that there isn't a lot of spotlight on those issues. And so, as much as like I think that yes, the pandemic has caused a lot of stress in the society, it has also kind of accelerated a lot of this understanding and knowledge of why all of these topics are really important to talk about.
Right.
And it's a good push in the right direction. I think it's just now moderating like the talks around it, right? Because it's so new a topic for all of us. We don't really know what is the right thing to say, what is the wrong thing to say, what is truly a mental health condition, and what is something that people, like with the support of family and friends, like people can get through it. So navigating that the unknown is the tricky bit right now, I think.
Thank you for that. And also, the word mental resilience became very popular over the period of 2 years, 3 years, right? Of course, it's all because of things that happened during that period of time where everything was under restrictions. Mental resilience, John. I know you are still doing your research, and you're also a doctoral candidate. What do we understand from the word mental resilience? Because everybody is using mental resilience nowadays. Oh, you must have a mental resilience. Oh, you must have a mental resilience. But what are we talking about here? What is mental resilience all about?
Yeah, so I think if you look at it from a more kind of scientific or psychological construct perspective, then mental resilience can take on different sub constructs that we can look at. But I think to make it a bit more, I guess, accessible for the layman, the idea of mental resilience is really as simple as how easy or how able we are to get up after an adverse event happens in our life. I think it's really this idea of bouncing back. So I'm not sure if you all have watched Hell's Kitchen before, but whenever they fail to cook something properly, then he keeps asking them to bounce back and bounce back. And I think that's really the idea of resilience. How often and how frequent, how able are you to bounce back after something has happened in your life? And in terms of this, there's still a lot of kind of conflicting research in resilience, because it's a very challenging term or challenging idea to actually quantify. But I think the consensus so far is that, by improving our resilience, we are definitely able to lead a much more mentally well life. So, people are suggesting that to build resilience, you have to build it slowly and over time. And that's why you see when the pandemic hit, why were some people a lot more affected than others? And we kind of found that people who were able to adopt a very agile mindset and who were able to kind of shake off the adverse effects of the pandemic very quickly, these were the ones who came out a lot more resilient. And these were also the individuals who have over time already been able to adopt a mindset whereby they are very agile, they are very quick to adapt to things. So they kind of soak in the damage and then later push forward and find a solution to all these issues.
Right. So mental resilience, we talked about this. Thank you, John, for that. Sharmain, you're going to add on something on that, on mental resilience?
I think having a balanced way of looking at your life would help with mental resilience. So, when something goes wrong, so if you think about it from like a balanced scorecard perspective, so that is a corporate term, like a very business term. But if you apply it to your life, then we are looking at, how do you balance bringing in like total wellness dimensions, right? But really, like if you can just use any way of looking at your life, like maybe your friends and relationships and your work life and then your personal life, like if you have a good balance of those pillars, right, when one crumbles, like you have the other two to kind of support you and back you up, and kind of get you across those more bad or difficult times, versus like if you kind of put all of your eggs in one basket, right? So if you put it all in your professional career, for example, and then you lose your job during the pandemic, then that would hit you a lot more, because then you don't have friends and family support because you didn't spend too much time with them, or you don't have your own hobbies that then you can embark on when you have now free time when you lose your job. So like I think mental resilience, for me at least, is like this idea that, hey, look at your life from beyond one lens.
Right. Thank you, Sharmain, for that. Another part that we before a tsunami comes in, there's always alarms. People know, observations. Nowadays, there's a lot of things that's improved since the last tsunami that we had. The warning. So many things that they look at the vibrations, even the movements, and so forth. But something like for mental resilience, or when we say how do we stay mentally strong, is there some sort of thing that someone can practice, or to accept failure? Because most of us, emotionally, I think we all will be affected if something, a failure comes in, whether it's a relationship or financial or career. Is there some kind of a practices that someone can do before something come and hits them back? That's why we're talking about how do you stay mentally strong, John?
Yeah, so I think I'm quite glad you really asked this question, because actually at Total Wellness, we have this wellness planning workshop that we do for people. And it's really a behavior and emotion and attitude monitoring system that we help them to develop over time, that they can create ahead of time. So, things like how do they identify their life triggers? How do they basically be able to kind of know what causes them certain distress or causes them certain discomfort, and things like identifying downward spirals for them, things like identifying crisis situations, how do they manage all these situations. So basically, if you're able to plan for your wellness ahead of time, you will have the solutions, or at least solutions that may be able to create some kind of influence and impact over time. And then when you actually go into the situation with whatever situation you're facing, then you're more prepared as well, both mentally, and you already have done all the homework beforehand in terms of preparing for your own mental health.
John, if someone wants to get fit, they go to the gym, right? Or pick up a sport or hobby, then they know that, if I practice this in the next 4 or 5 months, I'll be stronger, I'll be fitter. But if you're talking about mentally strength, and you like just mentioned that, you have at this TWIS, where you have these courses. So which is actually you prepare yourself to accept failures. But let me just ask you this. I mean, of course, we are all full of hormones. We are very sometimes we can get agitated, angry, emotional. But comparison to all these hormones, but most of us, right? Probably we have observed it. Either somebody is in the extreme of getting angry, or they become very emotional. Every little thing, even if the ant is run over by a bicycle, they get very emotional. Or if the food they ordered, they didn't turn out to be what they expected, they get very emotional, maybe angry. What exactly is happening to them? Or whether is it something with their attitude, or their discipline, or what is happening, John?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about all these behaviors, right? So behaviors are usually learned over time, and these could be, from looking at people who are in their lives who have behaved in similar manners in the past, or they haven't learned how to kind of process and manage their own emotions, and be able to express them in a sort of less extreme manner. It could also be, they have been abused in the past, experienced some kind of trauma that prevents them from being able to actively process some of these issues, and because of that they are not able to kind of be able to express them in a way that is not very, to a certain point, different from other people. Yeah, so I
Right.
think there are many reasons why people could be like that, and most of the time it stems from the way that they have developed some of these behaviors and thoughts and attitudes over time. It's really, we are basically formed from our habits, our experiences in life, and naturally, if you want to kind of talk about it from a mental illness kind of perspective, that could be a genetic factor as well. Some people may be predisposed to some of these things, but it's really ultimately, at least I believe, there's a stronger environmental influence there, in triggering some of these underlying genetic factors. But definitely, there are studies that suggest there is a certain genetic component to some of these
Right.
so-called personalities, I suppose.
Right. Thank you, John. And then for Shamin, I mean, I know you are an expert in the HR role, and of course, we got experiences there. But do you think that people are now ready to go back to offices because they feel comfortable? Because all this while we worked from home, do you think they are now 2 years they have not met people, friends, bosses, and are they able to achieve it? Because sometimes they are very conditioned, they would look very
Yeah.
top professional, but below they're wearing shorts and slippers, or not even slippers. So what exactly
Yeah.
is happening? Do you think people are more comfortable right now?
I think people are more comfortable, but I think it also depends on, which demographic you're looking at. There are some demographic that are like the youth, right? They're definitely enjoying the fact that they get to work from home some days, so the hybrid working seems like to be the most like the most accepted one right now, where people don't feel like they need to travel. So actually, interestingly, I feel like a lot of organizations and their employees enjoy the FaceTime with their peers. The thing that they are not very interested in now is the 1 hour traveling time to and fro from work.
Yeah,
So it's really the
yeah.
traveling time that is stopping people from going back. It's not that
Mhm.
they don't want FaceTime with their colleagues, because actually I know people who like that and enjoy that. Yeah.
Mm.
And with regards to, like, it's quite interesting you mentioned corporates, because we also work a lot with schools, and whenever I go to schools and give talks, right, I get to talk with parents and things like that. And
Right.
the difficult thing, I think, is the transition that students have to make back to schools, because, like, some of them, especially those primary one, primary two, primary three children, they
Yeah.
haven't been to a school before, like a proper class.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
them going back, that anxiety, emotional anxiety, is a lot different, I think, than we adults. Yeah.
So I mean, of course, speaking to the both of you all, we can conclude this, right? It's probably is a habit.
Mm.
It's a periodization, a period of time where when the first pandemic came in, all of us have to work from home, right? So a lot of them didn't feel comfortable. Oh no, I want to go to office. No, I want to have my char kway teow. No, I want to have my prata for my breakfast. Those sort of things. Because they have already conditioned for these processes. But along the way, they forced to stay at home and work. Then they become very norm to it. And then when you ask them to go back again, they cannot. So is adaptation a very key to the humans, John?
I think definitely, because some people are a lot more adept at changing and shifting their kind of mindset and behaviors based on the situation, and definitely there are other people who are more um, frequently, who prefer comfort over change. So I think when we work with people, we talk to them, we kind of share that change is really inevitable. and that the best way is to kind of really roll with the flow and just take it as it comes, and to find a way to help them be able to identify certain trigger points that potentially may influence their experience with the new situations, or to kind of identify different aspects that they can work on even ahead of time, so that they are able to adapt more quickly whenever a new situation arises. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Sharmain, you got any take on this?
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. I think it also it's people dependent, and it's based off of like their experience growing up. And something about emotions that you've mentioned just now, like I've always had this perspective that emotions are just really your personal compass of what's right and wrong for you. So if you feel negative towards something, it can be anger, it can be upset, it can be frustration, and all of that, right? It doesn't mean that there is no right or wrong to emotions, but I mean, the actions might be right or wrong, morally right or wrong, right? So I'm not saying that,
Right.
just because you feel a certain way, so you should behave a certain way, even when it harms someone else. But I'm just saying that, like, hey, if you feel a certain way, like a negative way, that could mean that that situation is not right. So then, how do you evaluate that situation, and discern, like, okay, what's the thing that really frustrates me or is making me upset right now? I think would be quite helpful to people.
And I'm also know that the TWIS with the aim to promote and empower people to take more holistic and preventive approach to care for their personal and wellnesses. When we talked about these 10 dimension, which I'm
Yeah.
looking at it right now, the wellness framework, the physical, spiritual, social, creative, intellectual, environmental, occupational, digital, and financial wellness. I
Mm.
think pretty much it's all covered there. When I look at it, it's very holistic approach. But you want to talk a little bit more about the causes that you mentioned earlier. Where can people look them up for, or if they want to sign them, where they can look them up for these informations?
Sure. So we actually have quite a few social media platforms. We have Telegram,
Okay.
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn,
Right.
as well as a website. So every month we choose a different theme to talk about. So this month is on financial wellness. So we really talk about a lot about how do you save, what are important things to look at when you are investing in like crypto. So we don't provide any advice,
Right.
to like which platforms to use, but really it's like, what do you look out for when you're investing in some of these things, and what should
Right.
you research when you go to this. So very like just information out there to help you navigate like new information or new things or trends, and then key points that you can either try for yourself and incorporate into your daily life, or just watch out for.
Right. Thank you, Shamin.
Mm.
John, I mean, along the line that we spoke about, all right, setting goals, it's okay, to break them into smaller goals. But what will your humble advice to people, every year for the past 10 years is the same goal. It's been repeated. Probably the memo just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but nothing has been achieved. And then somehow or other, they're just clueless, right? It's not that they are lost, but clueless, and then they just. What will your advice be?
Yeah, I think in these cases, right, where people have goals that they can't seem to reach, I think it's important to understand what are the barriers that are blocking them. So for me, whenever I try to make a goal that I haven't been able to reach, I will always kind of evaluate it later on to understand, what exactly were my barriers? Were they within my control? I think it's important to know whether some of these barriers are within your control versus, outside of your control. So if outside of your control, you maybe have to adjust your goals a bit more. But if it's within your control, then you can take active steps towards addressing some of these issues. So, for example, if someone every year they say, "Oh, I'm going to lose 10 kg by the end of this year," and then they every year they've been failing it. So I would ask, what are some of your barriers? Is it perhaps there's a lot of food around your house? Is it perhaps you're eating when you're bored? Is it perhaps do you have some kind of issue with your body image, or is it are the people around you not very supportive when you engage in your dieting efforts as well? So there are many potential causes, and understanding each of these barriers along the way, being very self-aware, being very introspective, can definitely help break some of these seemingly unrealistic goals that don't seem to work every year. And I think importantly is to really update your goals as you go through them, not to leave them for a yearly affair where every year you come up with new goals. And I think when we talk about wellness planning, we always tell people to aim for, every 3 months, review your wellness plan, see what needs to be updated, what needs to be kept fresh, and then, move forward from there.
Right. So this is it's a billion dollar question. Why is it always 1st of January becomes a New Year resolution? Is it because it's a brand new year and then again start back again every year, right? So is it something that the mind has already set up? You know what? It's a brand new start. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. There are like 20, 30, listings down there. But then someone not able to finish it. Why I ask that is because I spoke to someone recently. And I just said, hey, what is your New Year resolution? He said, not to make one. I said, like, wow, you're not going to make any resolution. That's good. He said, well, if I need to change something, I change it on the spot. If I want to do something, if I want to take up a course, if I want to change my career, if I want to start exercising, I do it now. When was the best time? Now. When is the greatest time? Now. So there are some people with this kind of mindset. It's like, I'm going to do it. That's it. Not until next month, next week. These are all excuses. But there's some who says, no, I'm going to start only on 3rd of January because it's a new year. I'm going to be a new me. So what is the differentiates that we are looking? Because we're looking at both extremes here, John. So what is the mind is giving or the person is making a choice? Who is making the choice?
So I think when we have such a socially constructed idea as a new year, right? It's really that the new year is kind of symbolic to mean, it's a marker or a reminder that, you have a blank slate now. You have 365 days to fill with whatever you want to do, and you no longer have to care about, the past year, even though when we look at it from a practical standpoint, it actually doesn't really matter because the days don't actually, there's really no significant tangible change that you can tell. So it's mostly symbolic. And when it comes to the mindset, some people are very action driven. They kind of rely on solutions and they look for these solutions very proactively. So these are the individuals that actually are able to hit their goals because they are the ones who, the minute they find something wrong, they go and look for the solutions, they identify what needs to change, and then they go ahead and change it. While those people, when they try and make New Year's resolutions, they are the ones who, either their resolutions are not that firmly held, so it's not something that they want to immediately change, or something that maybe they become comfortable with. So they use the new year as a way to kind of gain a greater sense of control over their life once more, and are able to kind of, once again, by having this aspiration, this goal to aim towards, they're able to move towards this goal, hopefully, even if it's just a little way forward. So whenever you, at the end of the year, you do your year-end review, you can say that, how close do you actually reach to your New Year's resolution? Yeah, and I think
So, John,
yeah.
Carry on, John.
No,
Carry on.
I just saw the comment come up, and
Okay.
intentions, exactly. That's really the best way to look at it. When you have New Year intentions, these are things that you can subsequently work from and work on to be able to move towards goals that you can create from these intentions.
Thank you, Davey, for that particular statement. But John, what I was about to ask you is, so we know that there are some go-getters, right? I just decide I want to go and get it now, all right? If I want to start losing weight, I do it now, all right? It's not going to happen in 6 months' time. That kind of attitude, all right? And then another attitude is say, no, you know what? I'm going to start only on January 1st. And the midnight strikes, the 1st of Jan, I'm going to start. Of course, we're not judging, but based on these two extremes that we are looking at, extremity, of course, we all know that go and get it is the best choice. But in your so-called, in your view, is these both are okay? One who's going to procrastinate, one is getting it done. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I think definitely both are okay. Both are absolutely natural and normal. So I say this because the idea is really that even when you look at psychotherapy or counseling, people have the misconception that the minute you go for these, your problems will be cured. And the reality is that until you are ready to make the change, until you personally want to make a change, or you're able to kind of work through the barriers that are preventing you from reaching that stage where you want to make a change or you are able to make a change, there's always going to be this kind of baggage that you can't shake off. So I would say that, people who genuinely or who want to make a long-term commitment to a goal or to a New Year's resolution, and procrastinate it, those are fine as well. It's probably because they haven't reached a stage where they are ready for that kind of change, and they need to navigate these challenges as well before they are able to reach that space where they can get into the mindset of those other goal setters and who want to chase particular goals as well.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that. I mean, you're giving credits to the both, because one will start a bit slower because of certain circumstances. Another one is like, the attitude, just go and get it. Coming from the fitness industry myself, we believe no procrastination, because, in fitness, or whether you have a particular health goal or fitness goal, it adds to start now. If we prolong it for, say, next week or next month or next year, I mean, if it's a doctor's advice, say that, you know what, you can't exercise until a certain period of time, then of course you got to follow the professional advice. But if someone is generally healthy, done their medical screening, they should start exercising, not just jumping into the horse and be a race jockey. But what I'm saying is that it has to start now in order to see the results in the upcoming months and years, right? You can't put out an apple seed and say, I want an apple tomorrow. It's not possible. So it works for certain people, to go and get it done. But some, like what you mentioned, right? They have some time, there's certain conditions, and there's certain initiative they want to put in to get the result. So both are fine. So Sharmain, your take on this, the both sides that we talked about.
I believe that if the person himself or herself do not want to make a change in their life, like no matter what no one can make them change. So one example is that I think if you use like the mental health side of things, right, like psychotherapy, like John mentioned, people have been to many that there are a lot of people who go to many sessions of psychotherapy, right? So they start psychotherapy, but at the end of a year, there is no progress from before they started psychotherapy. And it's the same. Like if no one, they might be able to be present for the session itself. I think it's slightly different for fitness, because if you do skip like for 30 minutes every day, you will bound to get like, if you actually skip, right, for 30 minutes every day, you're bound to get like slightly stronger and slightly healthier. So there is slight difference, but there is the whole like, oh, you have to do it for half an hour at least to see any difference in your life. So the reason why I say that is because like I know that although I started skipping on the 1st of January, I've already like started hand-eye coordination issue. I've already started practicing like jumping on the spot with like tapping of my hands to get going and make sure like I have a beat going for me, so that when I pick up the skipping rope and try to actually jump, like I know that I won't fail so badly that I don't want to start again. And so like for me, like take the small first step, to make things easier for yourself to start something very, very new and very different and out of your comfort zone would be something that I think people can try, especially when they fear like the unknown and fear the different like style of life or yeah.
All right. So we're definitely going to come and check back on June on Sharmain. How's the progress? If I can't get you, then I probably will get John and say, hey, John, how Sharmain is doing on a skipping, man. All right. Let's do a skipping test and see who can skip well. Interesting topic, we talked about for the past 54 minutes. All right. We're going to give a Q&A section for the next 10 minutes. If viewers have any questions, you can definitely ask us or engage us, and we are more than happy to answer that. But during these 10 minutes of while waiting for these questions to come in, I know some of you all have already written in. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask them in a while. But John, looking at right now, at the current moment, pandemic is gone. We are all so-called seasoned. Even if they put us back at home, we know what to do. Hey, let's meet up for Zoom, wine or coffee. We can do all those stuff. We are now very comfortable. Being uncomfortable, we are very now comfortable. If ever, touch wood, if ever something happens again and we got to stay back at home and all those stuff, may not be 10 years, 30, 60, who never knows. Do you think we can able to go back again? Or do you think that we need some time again? No, I don't want to work from home. Those kind of stuff come in, and then after a period of time, they go, yes, I want to stay at home. We keep constantly, we're changing. I think probably that's what we humans are. We can't be just in one place. Constantly we are changing. So your take, John.
Well, I think that's a really challenging question to kind of predict the future, right?
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on how we move from here on out. So I think if we have adapted and adopted some of the existing practices, especially with hybrid work and also the ability to kind of be more flexible with the working approach and also adjusting some of the metrics we use for key performance indicators in our workplaces and all that. And if we maintain this trajectory of focusing more on other aspects of our life beyond just work and a more holistic focus, I would think, then when we eventually have to touch wood, if we really have to go back to a pandemic situation, I think people will be able to kind of draw from the lessons they've been through before. And I think even if as bad as this pandemic was, if it wasn't for SARS all those years ago, we may have
Yep.
been in a worse off place. We may not have some of the basic protocols that were needed to even be able to get through this pandemic in such a relatively unfazed or unharmed state. And even for the frontline workers, it was really bad for them. But then because of all the protocols from before, they were able to still really mobilize very quickly. And I think that's what we humans do best. We adapt very quickly. We are able to kind of change and shift and evolve very quickly as well with the times, and with technology improving even faster, perhaps we will be able to take some of these lessons and become even better the next time this ever happens. And hopefully it doesn't, but chances are, with the way that we have been so far,
Yep.
probably sooner or later this may happen again.
Thank you, John. I'm going to take one question right now. Chris, thank you, Chris. Thank you, John. Does breathing exercises help anxiety?
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Chris. And I think it really depends where your anxiety stems from. Definitely for myself, I have used breathing exercises when I'm feeling particularly anxious. There are different types of breathing exercises out there as well. So you really have to find one that works for you. Some do I think there's a 4-7-8 process whereby you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then you breathe out for 8 seconds. And there are different variations of all these breathing exercises that people use. So there are definitely apps on YouTube that you can try, like not apps on YouTube, sorry, videos on YouTube that actually they give you a timer. Then you just breathe and follow their instructions, and over time it's supposed to help you. But I would say with anxiety issues, sometimes it depends on what kind of anxiety issues you're experiencing. And it's best, if it's very frequent and it's constantly affecting you, it's best to get in touch with a professional so that they can help unpack the roots of your anxiety. Because sometimes if there are certain trigger situations or there are certain things that trigger your anxiety, then the breathing only supports and makes your symptoms less severe, but it doesn't help you reduce the anxiety, or it doesn't help you manage some of the challenges that come with this particular trigger during your anxiety periods as well.
Thank you, John. Sharmain, I mean, we are coming to the end of Kopi with Vans. You was having coffee, right? Are you having coffee? No?
I mean, I'm done with it, but yes.
Oh, you're done with it. Okay. Yeah, John was having water. Yeah, John. So, yeah, John, we're going to have coffee, yeah? Okay, Sharmain, we are coming to the end of the Kopi with Vans. Do you want to tell our viewers anything in particular? I mean, it can be either be pandemic or the topic that we talked about, the New Year resolution 2023, or is there something that you want to share with all the viewers today?
I think the main thing when it comes to wellness is that, like we share a lot of like different tips and tricks here throughout this hour, right? But there is no wellness is not like a quick fix. There is no product that you can buy or a thing you can pick up and magically your life would change. It really requires a lot of consistent and constant effort, a lot like exercise, right? Like then yourself, you do a lot of fitness related things, and it's the same concept. It's a lot of endurance, a lot of time, a lot of commitment, and just constant practice, so and reflection. So I think when it comes to mental wellness, there's also the element of reflection on what works and do not work for you. So if there's anything to take away from this, is if there is something that's troubling you right now, then have sit down and really think about what about that situation is upsetting you or frustrating you. Or actually, what, also think about the happy things, like what makes you happy, like in the past week, that you want to replicate again next week, and keep on doing those things that make you feel fulfilled.
Thank you so much. I mean, that was a wonderful advice that you're given to all our viewers who are listening. This, thank you so much, John. Your turn, John. I mean, I know we were talking about this podcast for quite some time. Given the time that the availability of slots, I mean, both of us are equally engaged in our own projects. Thank you so much for joining me, for taking your time on this precious evening for the both of you, Sharmain and yourself, John. But before we end the show, the podcast, something that you want to give it to the viewers
Yeah,
from
I think
TWIS. Yeah.
yeah, I think definitely, much like what Sharmain said, really the hope is that people will not just let go of wellness the minute the pandemic kind of blows over, and really this is part of our life, and mental health is as equal as physical health. And really it's something that you don't realize will impact your life until much down or later down the line. So if you are having a mental health challenge, and if you are not looking after your mental health very proactively, I highly encourage you to either seek help or to do it, more proactively as well. Really, mental health issues don't come overnight most of the time, unless it's like one of the traumatic stuff, and it takes time to develop sometimes. And before you know it, you're struggling to get out of these
Right.
challenges. So really be more proactive, take care of it, and ultimately we need to start treating mental health as seriously as our physical health.
Thank you so much, John. That was a wonderful statement that you have mentioned. And thank you to TWIS as well, Sharmain and John Jia, for the past 1 hour with me, Kopi With Vans. Thank you so much, John. John and Sharmain, I mean, do you want to give our viewers how they can look out for if a particular viewer will have a question, or they want to, attend your course or whatever, where they can look for these informations from TWIS? Sharmain,
I mean, you can
is there
search
a
us out
Facebook?
on
You want to mention
Instagram.
your Facebook or?
Yeah. Facebook works too. I mean, both of us, John and I, are on LinkedIn, so we are quite active there. If you drop us a message there, we're happy to share a lot of links with you. And I think
Right.
we will share the links with Vans if you
Okay,
can put it up somewhere. But yeah, we're
sure.
on all social media platforms. So if you type Total Wellness Initiative SG, you'll probably find us there.
Okay.
And then workshops wise, we are always kind of promoting it on social media, so you will definitely be kept in the loop.
Thank you so much, Sharmain. Thank you so much, John.
Mm.
Thank you so much for spending the 1 hour with me and talking on this topic of New Year resolution. I know there are more things that we can cover perhaps in the upcoming podcast. We definitely will have to come back again, especially on Shamin on June. We'll check her on her skipping, perhaps she may come back and say, what, Vance, on March, I'm already done. I'm an expert right now. It's like, wow. So yeah,
I can
speedy
do
recovery for
crisscross
your knees.
skips
Sorry?
now. I can
What
do
was that?
crisscross skips now.
Wow. And of course, a speedy recovery for your knees. Knees, right? You
I
mentioned?
know. Yeah, it was so
Yeah.
sad because it's the same day. And I was just like, oh, I want to do more tomorrow. But then,
So, well, recuperate and then start back again.
yes, I will.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, John. We
Thank you,
Thank you,
definitely keep in touch.
Vance.
And we're definitely going to come back again, another exciting podcast with the TWIS with Charmaine and John. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, John.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Charmaine. All right, these are the folks from Total Wellness Initiative Singapore, TWIS. That's right. Wonderful speakers. I've been coordinating with them for the past 1 year, I think so, because of given engagement in projects. So we will not be able to do come back, but it is in Spotify as well, where John, actually a mental health researcher, has mentioned a couple of stuff, right, which we can take away, especially on bigger goals, smaller goals, and how we look at things, right? Whether you're a procrastinator or the go-getter, that's all perfectly fine. But we have to be kind to ourselves. I mean, that's a problem with us as humans. We're never kind to us. We always want to get things done, especially we Singaporeans. I mean, we are phenomenon people, right? We are a phenomenon people. We always run and get things done, and we queue, and we put ourselves into so much of anxiety and stress until we get exhausted. I mean, that's a culture of we Singaporeans. But we got to take things back on a serious note, all right? Turn inwards. Most of the time, we're always turning outwards. And that's a problem, right? We are always trying to make things happy. We're always trying to fix things, and we want to do great. Maybe economical pressure, financial pressure, it be one of the factors because we are living in a fast world. But I think it's very, very important that sometimes we just have to take a chill pill, not a pill, but just chill. You just have to stop and say me time. That's it. Entire thing stays. The whole world stops. You just gonna relax and chill. We can always go to our beaches, East Coast, Changi. I mean, they're okay. Pretty good. Walk around the beach. Pick up a hobby, do things you like. Go and do pottery. Go and walk in the park or swim. Do everything and anything that makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, folks, you got to make yourself happy. If not, no one is gonna come and make you happy. And like what John and Sharmain has stated, the amount of pressure and the amount of anxiety, the amount of depressions going on in the world, we don't have stats. But of course, there's always a stat. But it's just increasing because of our activities, and sometimes we forget to turn inward. So always turn inwards first, and then you can start caring for all the loved ones around you. All right. Again, thank you so much to the folks from Total Wellness Initiative, John and Sharmain. We are at Spotify and Apple Podcasts, in LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, little, but TikTok as well. So all social media platform, we are there. So please come and catch me and Kopi With Vans, and happy to share with you a lot of information as well. We are going to come back again next week, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Very interesting topic again. We are having a neurosurgeon who's going to come and give us a talk pertaining to the health segment. Today we talk about on the psychology part. The month of January is, I want to emphasize a lot on mental resilience, right? It's very, very important that we need to have gear up, get ready, because we have a good 12 months before 2024. All right. I've said enough, and I'm going to catch you again next week, 9 p.m. at Kopi With Vans. For right now, adios, amigos.